Just imagining the listener getting all the plug-in sale emails and then getting a link to this, clicking on it, and landing here in the middle of their Christmas break.
What's the best Waves plugin for Heartbreak? Which compressor is best for loss?
Guys, first and foremost, a very, 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 very important day. It's Rory's 45th birthday.
Woo! Happy birthday, Rory.
There goes all the discretion. 45.
45, everyone. That's why he is so wise.
Brimful of
You think that's it?
45.
You don't even have just preternaturally wise. It's just sheer
age.
fucking attrition with age.
Ageism.
I'm raising my glass to Rory's birthday, so
Indeed.
Thank you.
join
I'll
me.
raise my AirPods.
Cheers.
Love you, bro.
Michael's drinking Four Loko.
It's also
Oh yes, Dylan.
it's also Rory's first Ravino, which is a big day for any wine lover. So
Wow.
cheers to
Moose and Goose will be pleased.
Yeah.
Rory has joined the club.
for those of you
don't-
that like it. It's a 2016 Buteau Premier Cru Ravino. Just for the record.
It's a pretty epic wine, and I had an epic wine last night that John gifted me last week. So it's been a good run. I'm feeling the love and feeling very grateful. Like I said to the guys, I'm not usually all that good at gratitude. You know, I can talk about it and pretend I can play the game, but I'm not actually that good at it. But I really feel it today. I felt there was a lot of nice messages came through, and the work that Spider and I were doing today felt like we were doing meaty work. It just felt we were making progress. Things were working, and my kids were great, and my wife was great, and just felt like in coming down here, it felt like there was a lot to be grateful for. And at the end of a year that's been rough for a lot of people, I weirdly can look back and say this is one of the best years of my life, which is an incredible, a strange thing to say. And I don't mean in any way to sort of, be dismissive of people for whom it was clearly the worst year of their life. But for me, it was a year of remarkable growth. And I'm happy and grateful for that. So that's what I got.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing.
It's something to be grateful for. I mean, that's the word.
There was opportunity in this year if you were lucky enough to be in a position to sort of grab it, you know, and I was. So
it was interesting to learn, talking to engineers directly, that for a lot of us, we were pandemic proof because we've been working from home. A lot of people that have back house studios, bedroom studios, maybe you thought it was weak because you couldn't invite your clients to a fancy studio with an SSL or a Neve board or something, or a Trident if you're fancy. But you could work, pretty easily. And if you're introverted like I am, you don't have to have attended sessions. So there was a lot to be grateful for during this time. So I kind of share your grateful feeling to have gotten through this year, with work and friends and, a new relationship and a lot of... It's actually, this episode, I guess, is a reflection on the year. We hit episode 20 today. So, man, we talked about doing this at the beginning of the year, right in lockdown, and we actually did it. And I'm pretty stoked we all did it. So it's nice to reflect on that. Man,
yeah.
Bring it a warm applause for Michael for really making this happen, honestly, like kind of sticking on me. We both stuck on each other, but really he would set up these meetings on whether it was a Wednesday or a Sunday, and we'd really kind of hash out what we can do for the community after not being able to do it live, and then kind of calling you guys on FaceTime and saying, hey, you in? Should we do this together? And honestly, Michael really ignited that. Just the way he does, the pursuance of things that seem like a good thing. Versus a lot of us that, and I'm close to you on that, but the idea that we think ideas are good and they kind of fade away because they don't come to fruition in a certain time span that maybe seems addictive in the beginning to like, oh, this is exciting, let's do it. And then it just kind of falls away. We made it happen. So thank you, Michael, for pushing that. Honestly, this has made my year really exciting.
Yeah, and while we're in the mode, we wouldn't be on the air without Dylan.
Yeah,
we just wouldn't have that many episodes edited and mixed and released and sounding as good as they do without Dylan. So
we wouldn't have any, because they'd be on a hard drive and we'd all be like, yo, who's doing it this week?
I'd be like editing episode 3 still.
Yeah.
I think you'd be on 1 possibly.
So sticking
like,
in
I think I got it.
Sticking in the Christmas spirit in the
I'm
mode.
happy with it.
Dylan, you motherfucker over there. Thank you.
Running it
big
through.
thanks.
Happy to be on board. Thanks, guys.
I mean, I could talk about this the whole episode. I mean, I'm trying to get good at gratitude. So I'm really grateful for everyone at this table, on screen, this idea, the community that we built, people coming upstairs and eating my food and talking about, things that I thought were, honestly, I'm sorry, I'm really distracted by the fact that both of you are on your phones right now.
Sorry,
Can you not?
We're sending the link.
That's super cool, but just like in the
Yeah.
beginning, and can we just?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That never happens, so I'm like, it's hard to stay focused when both of you. If one of you is fine, so delegate. Sorry.
We are here.
Yeah, the whole, our one conversation at home was a start on trying to continue this, and I don't know where I was at, but I was distracted. Sorry.
That's all right.
Someone else take over.
Well, I just had a birthday as well, and so I'm kind of feeling that same sort of end of year and a birthday and the holidays are coming up sort of feel. So I'm right there with you, Rory, in terms of like kind of the mode, or actually, I mean, I don't know where your head's at exactly today. We haven't had much time to catch up, and that's kind of what I wanted to dig into a little bit. Just seeing what mode you're in today. How are you feeling? What are you thinking about last year? Specifically, like I know for me, when it was my birthday in the morning, I wrote this huge, long journal entry / poem, just all these different areas of things I learned, things I want to improve. I'm wondering if you want to do a live mental journaling of just sort of some of the things that really stand out to you as like areas of growth that you're excited about or proud about, grateful for, etc.
Something that was on my mind on the write down. We have a weekly meeting, Spider, Kyle and I, for our projects on Wednesday morning, and we usually run a couple of hours, run through everything we do, proposals, and update Kyle on meetings that we've had where he wasn't involved, and just update each other. It's our weekly sync, and but we didn't get through all the work this morning before Kyle had a session start. So Spider and I jumped back on again after a bunch of other meetings at 2, and we were talking about this moment where a lot of things that we've done over the last couple of years, I mean, some of them for me are kind of 10-year projects or more, where a lot of opportunities are coming our way now. And something that I said to Spider on the call is, I think it's important that we don't get distracted by the opportunities, and that we focus on what we want. And what I sort of meant by that is that there are times when, either through luck or effort or happenstance, whatever, that things come your way and they can make a lot of sense. Like you could make 150 grand a year doing, I don't know, speaker installs or something, or you could make whatever doing whatever. And that's cool and it's great and you're lucky. But what do you want with your life? The question that we ask people all the time in our workshops is, we use the idea, and we've talked about it some on here on mic, but we use the idea of, let's imagine all your bills are paid and retirement is covered and cars and vacations and everything is covered. You've got a really great upper middle class living just dialed in, direct deposit to your account. What do you do with your time? You're not a billionaire. You're not Jeff Bezos. You're not sending people to Mars or the moon or whatever. But your bills are covered. All of the real struggles are covered. Healthcare, everything. So what do you do with the day? Do you still mix records? Do you still do design? Do you still master records? And I find them to be really useful questions. So back to what I'm 45. I'm halfway there. I mean, I'm more than halfway there. based on the what's the average lifespan of an American male now?
Ooh, maybe
You know,
82?
80.
Yeah.
82? Yeah.
So I'm more than halfway there, right? And the whole lifespan, health span thing that Peter Attia talks about.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever way you slice it, time is short. And today what's been on my mind is that, I'm lucky to have opportunities to do things, some of which I've created, some of which I just was born into by, where I popped out in the world. But what's more important is kind of what I want. And then in addition to that, the second thing that Spider and I talked about was this idea of, and I'm sure it's a theme that either we've talked about or that came up on a podcast or multiple podcasts that we're all sharing with each other or listening to, which is this need or this desire to find a fundamental sort of purpose in your work, a universal purpose, something that is of benefit to other people. And lately for me, I've sort of recognized that, because the feedback to what we're doing, to the podcast and sort of weird intersections between, mastering clients who are listening to the podcast or acoustics clients who are listening to the podcast or acoustics clients who become mastering clients. And you sort of have this wonderful, warm feedback. I think this human connection piece that we talk about so often, being in the business of human connection, and you can think about it, the human connection between a singer, minimizing what's between the singer and the listener's ears. So, a minimal signal chain, or minimizing the impediments in a session, in a room, or minimizing the amount of words you need to use to communicate a concept, and making it, more than being concise, making it stick, making it land emotionally. I can tell you a bunch of facts, but can I hit you in the gut with it? That's this sort of, there's a commonality in all my work. And it's been on my mind. And I think this search for truth in a song or a performance or an idea or a friendship even, sort of getting beneath the sort of layers that are comfortable and sort of usually leading with vulnerability, honestly. Usually it's being the first one to open up and say, with a friendship like yours and mine, Michael, that's developing, where we've only known each other a couple of years and we're kind of, we're peeling onion layers. We're sort of, some of the stuff we talked about in the last couple of months, we just wouldn't have talked about when we met each other first, So this search for truth, and then, the value of it. What's the value of that truth? And I think it's back to human connection. It's that phrase that Spider uses so often. It's the way that we can connect people, make them feel less alone, and sort of move the whole project forward,
I love that. There's a lot to unpack there.
Go unpack. Do it.
I want to keep throwing questions your way, honestly, as a birthday celebration.
Okay, I'm down.
I'm down with this.
Rory's in the
down.
birthday seat.
Yeah.
Yeah. A question that came up a few times in conversation recently is like, there's always a lot of good things, every year you can look back and say, this thing's good or this thing I'm pondering. What's an area where you feel like you're either like at a 0 out of 10 and you want to improve on, or you feel like you're a 9 out of 10 and you just want to get to that level where, it feels really good. You feel like you've kind of mastered or, achieved some new degree of understanding it.
0 out of 10 is always managing my time. That's the sort of chronic and massive dysfunction in my life. So that's a project, and there's lots of work happening behind the scenes to improve that. Working with a new assistant in the new year.
That's exciting.
Getting better at managing the calendar. Just small wins. Had an interesting experience this week of a client that I really liked, really connected with, asking for more than they paid for, significantly more than they paid for, like asking for double what they paid for. Like, oh, I thought you could basically do the work I paid you for all again. And I totally understand why they would do that, and where they're coming from and the kind of year they've probably had and some of the money they've spent on projects that they've done. But I held the line. I was generous in my response. 2 responses, 2 emails that took me, probably a total of 10 minutes to write. But they were thoughtful, and there was a lot of good information in there, good jumping off points for research if the client wanted to use them. But I didn't give him what he was asking for. Mm-hmm. And I would have every year of my adult life up to this year. Mm-hmm. So that's progress for me. The need to be liked, the need to be kind of other people's approval, or, something that I talked last week about a friend of mine back in Ireland who's going through a gnarly breakup and, with kids involved and everything. And we've had a lot of, it's an old friend that I, first guy I played music with. And we've had a lot of honest conversations about this sort of struggle with sensitivity, with being just the analogy I always use is the high gain microphone in a very noisy world. You're cranked way up, and it's cool when someone's whispering, but it's not so good when, there's a truck horn blaring, or people with loud needs or loud emotions or loud communication, Mm-hmm. So, in terms of a sort of a maladaptive approach to that sensitivity in your life is to make other people happy, because it keeps the noise level down. It keeps the intensity of emotion around you under control. So that's something where you get into patterns of saying yes, because it's much easier than dealing with an uncomfortable interaction after a no. So breaking some of those patterns has been something that I've been working on, and small wins, not, that's not my 9 out of 10 by any means. But small wins, and I'm happy for that, and you guys and the conversations we're having, and the sort of reinforcement from Spider on behaviors that are not so useful, not reinforcement, like calling me on behaviors, or at least making me aware when I fall into habits, has all been really helpful,
Yeah.
As a gift for you in the new year, what's a habit we should call you out on if you're falling into?
Wait, let's clarify. We built a system that does this on its own.
Yeah,
we built a system that's a safeguard against these systems, so it's not as if it requires policing or calling out. It is just merely a representation of the system in conversation.
Of course. And but I mean, even aside from that, and we talked about this a couple of episodes back, so we don't want to sort of relitigate that, But anyway, the other people's input has the feedback from other people has been really useful. People that I trust. I think that, you and I, Michael, spoke a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, and we were talking about the work on ourselves, and the phrase I used for 2021 was just about owning my, just being on mic here every week and just speaking the way I'm speaking right now. This is new for me. I'm communicating who I am to the world, and it's new.
Finally.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, maybe it is finally, but I don't know that I could have done this a couple of years ago, maybe I couldn't have done it until I started doing it,
Well, that's the most
that's it.
Truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. But whatever, I'm glad it's happening now, and I'm glad that people are connecting, and the feedback has been so warm, and so we had a couple of really great meetings this week that were where the people we were meeting had listened to the podcast and had sort of internalized useful ideas that we'd put out there, or useful questions, and it meant that our jumping off point for the meeting was so much further down the road. I don't know if you jump off roads, if that's a mixing of two metaphors there, but whatever, it was very useful.
You get off the freeway and exits.
Yeah, exactly. And what it meant was that we had a sort of shorthand in our communication. There were this concise language that we're driving at was shared, so we could reference ideas, big ideas, with a few words and know what the other meant, and consequently build on that then to something more personal, more connected. So I felt like in an hour with this client, we got to a level that would have taken us a lot longer previously. I don't know, a lot longer. So I was kind of quite proud of it, honestly. I felt like I could see the value of sharing and the value of being honest and the value of doing what we're doing, maybe especially this year, but just in general. So that theme of owning it for 2021, owning my ability, owning my weaknesses, owning, my mission to connect people and this drive at truth, declaring that, calling it when I see things going the opposite direction or moving away from them. Just in the last couple of months, I've let go of 2 commitments that would take, each individually took a fairly small amount of my time, but were regular distractions. Let go of both of those, and both were friends that I didn't want to leave down, and both were really cool when I said, "Hey, I can't do this anymore for you." So yeah, lots of little wins this year in that regard, So next year, I hope just more of it,
I wanted to rephrase my question from before, which is...
But I just answered really, I spent a long time on that answer. You can't just go and rephrase it now. No,
the one kind of before that. But what's a way that we could best support you in 2020?
21.
2021. It's actually going to repeat. I just saw Tenet. Going back in time.
Oh, God.
But we're just doing it backwards.
I don't know that there's anything. I don't know that I'm feeling like I'm missing anything from you guys, I think what's interesting is, again, to reference my friend who's going through a rough time back home, he's quite a reserved, contained guy. And he's hit a bumpy patch in his life. And he's really reached out to all sorts of people. He bought a house, a year or 2 ago in a new neighborhood in a new city. And his next door neighbor, who's a, 60-something-year-old woman, cooked him breakfast the other morning and talked to him about breakups. He didn't really know her. They'd seen each other in the street, waving. And he was open to it. And, I don't know that I know what I'll need until I need it. And I feel a confidence that you guys will be there for me and my other friends, old friends and new, who certainly were at the roughest points in my life. So I don't feel I don't feel a need. I don't feel a want for something I don't have. Honestly, maybe that's why I feel this gratitude today.
I want to just piggyback off that. I've never heard words in my head come out of someone else's mouth as potent as that just came out. I've been wanting to say that for about a decade to, well, at least 2 of you at this table. Rory and I have become close kind of similarly in the last few years, but I don't even know what I would need anybody for until you need the people, and you got to keep the people around that'll be there when you need them and offer the same in return. I mean, that was just beautifully put. So
really beautiful.
I have nothing else to say except for, whoa, thanks for that on your birthday.
And that's the episode.
I hope to be. No. I hope that I'll speak for myself, can, when that needs to happen.
Yeah.
I talked to you guys today, just sitting around the table about some family news that, that affects my dad mostly, me as well, but mostly him, and, his best friend and kind of my uncle is going through something right now, and I can't. It's hard for me to imagine my dad without that person who has come to aid for so long, because my dad doesn't have any. His brother passed away when he was younger, and I aspire to be as generous with my time as I possibly can to people that I love. And it's moments like when you hear words like that said, and then the potential of loss otherwise, that it really kind of kicks into gear. That's kind of the most important thing. Yeah,
it's about showing up.
But you don't know you need to show up until you need to show up.
That's it.
Getting a call in the middle of the night because someone's, in a car accident or something, and nothing else matters in that moment, right? We just talked about before getting on mic, if my studio went on caught fire because I have a Christmas tree up here or something, I'm not gonna get my PMCs out the door. I'm going to just leave with myself and us and make sure we're all out. And maybe some hard drives for the clients listening. Those are easier to grab. But the PMCs are staying, right? Like the Le Creuset, maybe I could put the hard drives in that because, the Dutch oven is
secure.
secure. But you know what I mean? Like we think we have attachment issues to things. Rory, you didn't really get to open up. I know you had more thoughts on this, and then we kind of got into setting up. But no. I'm actually curious on the on the concept of attachment to things, material things, and the ability to understand that the attachment is only in up until this degree, up until a certain degree.
Yeah.
And consumerism is a whole other extreme, and in understanding like that we're sold things
sure.
end over end. But in these certain moments where family is affected, or you're affected, or a close friend is affected, things start to matter less. It doesn't mean that they can't matter to some degree as well.
Yeah, that's been my experience in life, when you're all in your head about, got to finish this project, got to do that, got to do this, got to call that guy, this must happen, that person owes me this. And then something happens.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately you can and do reach out to everyone like, I'm out, something went down. My dad is sick, my whatever. And everything is fine. It all goes away.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's like, cool, got it, no problem, we'll handle it. And all the stuff you were bent out of shape sort of evaporates like it's like a mirage. It sort of disappears in a way. It's a construction in your mind, Why it's been on my mind is because my friend going through the rough time was sort of shocked at how many people were helpful to him of all sorts, old men and, checkout girls at the supermarket were sympathetic or empathetic or open to sharing. His parents, who he doesn't have that kind of, he described the conversation with his dad to me, and I was like, your dad? It's like Irish dad stuff. These kind of stoic dudes that I couldn't imagine having that kind of a conversation with his son. And anyway, he was expressing his gratitude and surprise at how many people were there for him. And I was just like, dude, do you remember when this happened in my life? And he was like, yeah. I was like, you were there for me. Do you remember when this happened in my life? And it's like, yeah, you were there for me, like really there for me. Yeah. Like I'm a pitiful mess, like on the floor, and you're the one picking me up, So I was kind of like, it's coming back to you, you know what I mean? It's like you have a community, and it's not credit in a bank. It's not an asset, but it's certainly something that we're lucky to have.
It's so much more valuable though.
Yeah, of course. There are people. Maybe we need a human kindness, index tracking this or something,
Well, listening to the Doing Good episode on Making Sense podcast with Sam Harris and Will McCaskill today, like talking about effective altruism and, how one could point themselves in a morally, pointed direction, like towards good at all time. And their example is money and donation, but they talk about people that what is it? It's less than 5%, but people donate their time, and then they find a way to career shift or start in the idea of giving, and that's it. That's what it is, and like that's the human condition, is to connect and give. So you walk, what's the example of walking by a pond and you're in your nicest suit, the Peter Singer example, like you're in your nicest suit, but you see a young girl drowning in the pond, you jump in. Who gives a fuck about the suit, right? You just jump in. And if you don't, you're evil, right? So or you're arguably evil depending. And
or it's a really nice suit. Like a really nice suit. Yeah, I'm just saying.
Said the man with 2 daughters.
I know. I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. But that, listening to that, hearing the news about my uncle, and hearing you say these things, look, I'm stopping working on Friday, and through the rest of the year, there's obviously a lot that's going to be thought about. in regards to those three things and what it means to actually do good and what it means to live a meaningful life. Also existing while making music, because there's no need to stop making records. And it's just, there's got to be more to it. And I'm not sure what that more is. And I'll be honest, because I also think that a lot of people that I know don't know what it is either. And we're sitting here talking about this, and I'm not sure what it is. And
more than the work, more than the money, more than the achievement.
Yeah, I mean, the example you just said, I have to call this person, I have to do this thing, this person owes me that, I said I'd be here, but I'm not. Like all the things that life seems to want from us. And then your mom calls you and tells you that someone potentially has a week to live. And you're like, oh, okay. Now, it's not me, but that could be me, right? Mm-hmm. And for someone that has had 2 near-death experiences, it resonates really, really deeply with me. I mean, like, I've had 2 a decade apart from each other, and I've the gratitude that you say that you're not very good at, like, I try to be as good as possible, mm-hmm. just because of those 2 experiences. And so this week, now there's so much to reflect on for the next few weeks of the year. And I don't necessarily want to make the podcast episode all about this, because I haven't really thought too much, but the words that you said that I commented on are making me not really be able to think about much else, because there's got to be more.
I think our episode theme is emerging here. This will drop. This will drop the week of New Year's, I think.
Yeah.
So it's maybe a perfect time to recap on the year.
Mm-hmm.
Recap on where we're at, and maybe what we think about next year, and everyone will be, it's been an early year for a lot of people, so everyone will be in some version of this. There are people getting home, have made the choice to go home, maybe for the first time this year to see their parents or whatever, or people who didn't, and who are going to be stuck alone in an apartment. I was talking to Spider maybe the other night when you were over about a client of mine at the top of COVID early on, who hadn't seen, at the point we were having a difficult first project together, difficult for reasons outside of my work. We've done work together since, which has been amazing. But difficult, anxious revisions, problems, trying to understand where mixing ends and mastering begins, and stuff like that. And talking to him on a call one day, and he said he hadn't seen another human for 6 weeks. I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, I was like, you go to the store, right? You get coffee sometime. He's like, no, I've been in my apartment for 6 weeks. They're Amazon delivering food and Postmates. I was like, I've just felt really bad for the dude. It's like, that's a really hard place to be. Yeah. I don't know that I could do 6 weeks in a room alone, in a box, in a city, without trees and family and stuff, So there are people for whom the holidays will be that, and there are people for whom it might be the first time. So anyway, it's a good time to review the year and look forward.
If we're on that note, Christmas tends to be a time of loss in my family's life, just historically. Like my dad's brother, who I mentioned earlier, passed away. It was like the morning after Christmas, like 10 years ago, I think, maybe 12. Maybe longer. It's hard to, but we reflect on that every year, and we're all together as a family, and we talk about him. And like Uncle Michael was a huge inspiration on me and on a lot of things. And I always think that he would have been the most proud of any success that I have than pretty much anybody in my family. It's just kind of how I feel. And I go home, and that's happening, right? And then the scenario that's happening now at home, I can't go home to be there. It's too late to make that decision. But this is the time where you'd want to be home. So I'm reflecting on the fact that, like, I got you guys around. My girlfriend's been kind of unbelievable, especially last night when I kind of got this news, and it's been kind of an amazing first Christmas in LA to begin with. And I'm trying to do my best to invite people over and get COVID tests twice to be able to come over for Christmas and have dinner here, because I'm going to cook a meal and all that stuff for, max 6-8 people. And it's tricky. It's a tricky year for a lot of people, and I hope that people that hear this and went through it on the other side of Christmas, that they made it through all right. Because it's
it's been a rough one for a lot of people. What about you, Spider? What are you thinking at the end of the year? What do you think about this year or next?
Well, I mean, really, to tag on to what you guys are saying, this sort of shift in priorities that happens when we have, when we're threatened with loss, if it's some kind of accident where somebody's hurt or some kind of near-death thing, priorities shift naturally, suddenly, and things get really clear, like what matters, what doesn't. The ranking of your priorities shifts, and the things that come to your attention shift. And most often, there's a powerful social thing that happens. And I've thought a lot about how to trigger and cause this shift in priorities and this social cohesion without the trauma, without the risk of trauma. And I've had different ideas like, families planning camping trips, for instance, where after the hurricanes that were so devastating to the Houston area, you saw people from all over, the country really showing up to help, like teenagers showing up with bass boats and forming little navies to go save people and animals and shit. And, this sort of group adversity dynamic tends to bring out the best in people. Crime goes down. Mental health admissions to hospitals goes way down. Suicides go way down. During 9/11, same deal. During the Blitz in London during World War II, same deal. They staff up the mental hospitals and nobody shows up. It's an interesting fact that we sort of snap into action and cohere as a group when we're threatened as a group, when it's perceived that way. It's really interesting. It's not 100%, obviously. Some people have really negative responses to this. However, I remember 18 years ago or so, I was in Puerto Rico for the Miss Universe pageant. I was visiting my new girlfriend at the time, and I was feeling run down and unwell before I got there. And then a few days into the trip, I end up in the hospital, and for about 48 hours, I believed I had leukemia, right? I was told I have leukemia, and this was, I was misdiagnosed. And then 2 days in, then they told me they thought it was AIDS. Which
why do I laugh? And
I know. Look,
it's like Larry David shit.
I mean, I've heard this, so it's wild to me.
It's a wild story. But what happened? I was discharged with mononucleosis and sort of like alcohol-induced hepatitis, they call it, because when you have mono, the liver becomes inflamed.
Yeah, makes sense.
Exponentially by alcohol or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. It's not a conclusive diagnosis, whatever. The point is, during that 48 hours, all of my productions I was doing in New York at the time, all the label gigs, all the stuff just stopped. And in my head, it was like, I guess I'm not doing that anymore. I'm doing this. I'm recovering from cancer.
Yeah.
How severe is it? What's the thing? Can we get my mom and dad on the phone? Like, I'm not doing a bone marrow biopsy in Puerto Rico, no goddamn way. How do I get on a plane to New York? And all this stuff, all these movements were happening in New York where the A&R guy who I was working very closely with, actually the guy who signed me to my deal, I was producing something else for him at the time. He had a buddy at Cornell who was like the leukemia guy, and like all this shit's happening on a Sunday, and like they're all getting ready for me to show up, and my folks are ready to fly down if necessary. My brother's involved. Everything just shifts and changes. I think it's probably not the best. It's a dangerous way to cause a priority shift, to have something so potentially traumatic. But what can we do to really feel like we can say what our priorities are, but to really, I mean, you've been in the near-death thing. Rory, I mean, all of us have probably had very scary life reorganizing experiences, and I imagine, you know, our community has too. It's how do we really feel those priority shifts without the trauma? You know what I mean? Like, how do you get up to that edge where it's still safe, the risk is low, but, you know, it's, you know, a hurricane coming through strips us of shelter, you know. So in my thoughts about camming is like, well, if a family works together to survive, like, can you walk that line where it's challenging, but you're not risking injury and death? You know what I mean? And can that somehow, like, the working together to get a fire going and like do some of these things that are a bit more challenging, can that do something? You know, I'm just thinking of anything that could. Anyway, I just think that's something that we can all think about is, you know, remember what it was like when your priorities shifted to the most important things.
I love that.
And to have some practice of bringing that to the surface. I don't really know.
It makes me think of, just quickly, I don't have much to say on this, but thinking about Rory saying like a lot of little wins this year. It's little wins. Someone asked a little bit more of me, so I asked them to compensate me more, or I wasn't able to do it. Or, I had a homie, I was FaceTiming today, like got offered to go fly overseas to work on a massive artist, like a dream artist to work with. And he's like, I'm going across country to my wife's family for Christmas. Like, I'm not canceling that. Like, I got to spend time with my girl. Like, this is priority. And like learning to reorient these priorities when the, before the exposure of trauma, these seem to be things that are loud and clear after the fact. And thinking about, even on a small scale today or yesterday, you know, I'm pretty stressed. I got like 9 songs to finish this week, and I'm taking the rest of the year off. And one of them was just a clusterfuck. So I just told my manager to say no. Like, the files were wild. I was like, I don't need this. Like, I just don't want to do this. Like, whether I need it or not is irrelevant. Like, I got to learn how to just say no. This is too much. And everyone needs to learn how to say that at different times. And these little wins are something to really, because they're not milestones. Like we're all looking for milestones, some accolades, some victory. And I'm looking at failures as milestones, really. I'm looking at like, oh, that didn't work out. So how do we prevent that from not happening again? And, get yourself a safe car so the car accident, is, I'm serious, Anyway, Michael, we haven't heard from you in a bit. I'm sure you're over there with some things to say, and I was curious if you had anything to add.
Well, I was responding to a message from Rory saying that my phone might be interfering with the mic. But,
sorry.
Is it better now?
Yeah, it was okay, temporary. Cool. It was just a couple of little niggles this week, but I'll go.
Yeah, I think Spider's point is really, really interesting. It's just a fascinating thing to explore, and I feel like I've definitely been in the space of exploring that. Not really coming to an answer, but definitely developing a philosophy around it. I think, when I was 15 years old, my mom and dad sat me and my sister down in the living room of our house, and my mom told us that she had, at that time, I think it was 5 months to live, and I was like going into high school, and that just rocked my entire world. I didn't have a career yet. I didn't really have any clear hobbies or passions at the moment. I was just a high school kid about to get some puberty going. Started. I don't even think I was that deep into listening to music even. I was just kind of starting, in many ways. And I just remember that whole thing rocking my world. And it motivated me. It's actually the reason that I'm a designer now. And so it's kind of an interesting relationship I've had over the years with design and trauma, and how those two things relate, or rather work in trauma, to abstract it a layer. Because I often find myself, or have often found myself, and this is definitely an area that I've continually worked at year over year, is like, how can I separate this need to kind of not have those, like, let me step back for a second. After getting that news, I dove into learning about design, learning about music, and sort of learning how to play music, learning how to create designs. And that was sort of my distraction in a really difficult time. Over the years, I got better at it. Then, design became a career, but I held on to some of those tendencies of like this, avoidance through design in a way. And it was something I was always trying to work out of my process, because I knew that was like this lingering area. Where was I going with this?
Avoiding feelings through the work.
What's that?
Avoiding feelings by working, or by diving into something.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, as I got older and built a career in design, it was like, so spoiler, my mom didn't pass away those 5 months. It actually took 10 years, and then she'd passed away, and I was well into my career at that point. And it was different, because at that moment, it was another moment. It was like a second death in a way. There was this perceived one that was going to happen in 5 months that didn't, and then the one that actually did. The one that did was like, now I'm working, and again, it's just like, that's all that matters, like climbing up the ladder, like doing the things, doing the calls, designing the big projects, working with the big companies, or whatever it is, making cool stuff, looking cool, being cool. It's just all the stuff that you get wrapped up with, and like literally just like an atomic bomb, it just like wiped all of that out of my brain. Like none of it mattered, literally nothing. And then like the smallest of memories, the smallest moments of, spending time with her, whether it was months before, years before, whatever, were like in the spotlight. And then, things like how many PDFs I had to send over, was not even remotely close. So I've definitely kind of been in that space of figuring out the relationship to work, and then the importance of life, and the nuances of the importance of life. What are those small things that really matter? And can I step back? Even today, we were watching Narcos, my dad and I just like stopped and just zoomed out fully from the moment, was like, this is amazing. I was like, this is like, that's it, like that's the only reason, I worked all day before, you know what I mean? Like, so I don't know. I think those two moments definitely affected sort of how I think about work, for sure. Definitely how I think about life, how I think about spending time with people and on things. But there was a point that Spider was making I wanted to touch on, and I'm kind of losing it, which is around the social cohesion part, without it being a traumatic,
without the risks. Risks, yeah.
And I love that. I'm wondering, like, if it always needs some fire, and I don't know, like, or a spark at least, you know what I mean? Like
high stakes or something.
What if the fire is truth? What if
just a stake,
What if it's the thing we talked about, this sort of lightning of honesty or truth? I don't know a better way to describe it, that connects people, where everyone in the room knows when the singer opens her mouth, or everyone in the room knows when the poet reads that line. I was thinking, I was The other night, sorry, I don't mean you're making a point. Actually, you keep going because you're on a run.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I attended, so a really close friend of mine, Shanice, runs an open mic in New York, like 3 different events. Obviously, they haven't been happening lately, but going to those events and just seeing people open up and read and say things that to a group of strangers that is so vulnerable and so potent. I mean, the cohesion in that room, the applause, the snaps, the hugs after, all of that is like the most pure love I've seen of people that didn't know each other. And really that didn't come from any degree of, well, I guess again, even there, the fear of performing in front of people is some flame, some spark. But I think behind that was the vulnerability aspect. And I think it did bring a room together, So I think to your point, it is definitely possible. It definitely requires a higher degree of sensitivity from everyone in the room, a higher degree of openness, which is hard to come by.
Openness in both directions.
Right. In all directions, yeah.
Like the resilience, if you think about what resilience is at a network level, it is the bonds between the nodes on a network. And in a human sense, the bonds between us are the quality of the communication, right? It is the the truthfulness of the communication. So if we're talking about being resilient against adversity collectively, we're talking about having a network that is held together by truth. Right? I'm kind of going there fast, but it has to do with that two-way communication being high quality. If it's poor quality, narrow bandwidth, dishonest, partial, then the bond is weaker than it would be otherwise. So that's on a more interpersonal level, right? And I think there's maybe a societal piece that could be explored has to do with strangers and just like the sort of societal tone, like the societal atmosphere could be more open or more closed and paranoid, depending on the mood or the whatever. But the what we can each do in our own networks to build resilience would be to try to, one, share truth, be open to truth from others. The word truth we're using it now because we've sort of started formulating some kind of understanding of what that means. It's an awkward word to use, concept, but
undeniability. There's something undeniable when it hits you, when something lands. We can come back to it. Keep with your point.
Yeah, I just, investing in your relationships, really revealing more of yourself, revealing meaningful things about yourself to the people around you. And now we're, obviously we're on microphones and we're doing some version of this at scale, like I went live Monday on Instagram again at 7 for my little after dinner drinks thing. And we got into like talking about different music that has moved me to tears or like, stuff that has moved you. And then I posted a bunch of pieces of music and then a bunch of people posted back. I mean, I think Ian Hultquist was like, I started a playlist with all this music called something about Get Your Sads On, or I forget what it was. It was like some, but just that sort of sharing and that back and forth about things that matter, the things that have substance, things that make us feel connected. We're sort of reverse engineering like what it was like to go to church every Sunday and have like a sort of transcendent, musical experience from some pipe or enormous pipe organ or some, choral singing or like choirs and having this shared sort of ritualistic musical experience, which there's research behind, as enhances social cohesion. Physical movement in a social context, whether it's a rave or like an Indian wedding or like
Tai Chi or something.
Yeah, whatever it is, like this sort of doing things as groups, demonstrations, public demonstrations of cooperation of any kind, like theater or whatever. We know this causes cohesion, enhances cohesion. But really, the bond is the quality of the communication. If it's bullshit, the bond is weakened. You're
making a case for an audience. In when it comes to art, there's writing the song and singing it, but it's got to be heard. It's got to land with someone for it to sort of fully
function
or materialize or have its full magical effect. The song has to be heard. It has to be internalized by other people. And I've had the situation where I've understood something about myself or about something I've been through, about something someone did to me. And I've known it in my mind. And I felt it, and I felt sad or hurt or whatever. And carried that for 6 years or 8 years or 12 years until I told someone and buckled when I said the words because they heard it, So there's something, there's a need there. There's a need to be heard. A need for an audience. There's something there. There's some connection to music too there, I think. So I get your discomfort with the word truth because especially, I don't know the word post-truth, but we're in some kind of fucking crazy abortion of truth at the moment. I mean, there's something awful going on to the concept of truth. So we're looking for a better word than that. But I think there's something undeniable. We always come back to the analogy of in comedy and watching great stand-up and comedians talking about that there's no gaming the system. The laugh comes from your body before your brain can mediate it. It reacts to the raw truth of it.
That's a good example because a stand-up doesn't exist without audience.
Yeah,
you can't develop the craft without the audience.
Yeah. It is. But that sort of when I think about truth in music or truth in ideas or truth in connection, it is that kind of undeniable quality. Just that thing where for a moment it's two tuning forks that are you ring one and the other one just resonates with it. It just lights up.
Yeah.
And there's nothing between it. There's an air gap. Yeah. They're not touching. It's just that pure resonance, sympathetic resonance, and that's the feeling or the moment that I'm sort of increasingly interested in.
Yeah, this thing about writing that you're into, about getting a statement or claim or even a question to not only be factual, but to also land emotionally, to penetrate, which really is a necessary component. You don't really learn through sheer intelligence alone.
I don't. Anyhow.
Motivation. Yeah. I mean, there was one of the latest episodes of The Glenn Show. He had another economist from Chicago on, and they talked about the research. He's an economist, but he's looking at research into learning and human development. That's his area. His whole career is in this area of human development from economics point of view. And the research around scholastic performance, IQ is incomplete. IQ does not predict school performance in a way that a lot of people think. It's the emotional piece that makes the difference. It's this is why I send it to you, Ruairi, because I'm so down on the concept of parenting, but it was putting a lot more importance on the emotional state of the family unit.
Yes.
And the sort of social atmosphere and its impact on motivation. Right? So really the intelligence is the subtext to the emotion and the emotion and the motivation sort of whatever matrix of it's a really fascinating idea because, not a lot of us think about learning in an emotional sense. And it really dawned on me, like your appeal. I was less into this idea, say a year ago, I would be more interested in the facts. Give me the facts. The facts are hard to get at. Come on, tell me something real, right? But the higher order version of that is tell me something real that is packaged in a way that penetrates, that sticks, that makes it easier to integrate. You know what I mean? It really is the sort of complete package of communication.
I think so.
And it's not possible without it. I mean, we've all read scientific papers that just go sort of through your brain and out, like through one ear and out the other.
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a huge failing in science, I think.
And you read Sapiens and you're like, oh, that makes sense. I can understand that story.
Yeah.
Thanks, Yuval. Yeah.
Yeah. What about next year, Michael? What are you thinking? We've had some texts in the last couple of weeks. What, you had a year in LA. It was a really different kind of year and different for you in so many ways, different COVID, different because of the work stuff and all of that. And now you have this scene change with being back on the East Coast, looking at trees, hiking every day, being near your dad. What are you, your sort of grander, like life ambitions or goals or whatever? What are you thinking about next year? Like sort of what's the next step on the journey?
I'm still formulating it. I think it's still kind of loose, and I need to reflect on it a little more, journal on it a little more. But what my gut is saying right now is, I think where I've lived the past 2 years is definitely not the best natural environment for me. I don't even know if it's a natural environment. It's a non-natural environment. I think I've never really been someone that's deeply drawn to city environments. It was for living, rather, for leisure. Yeah. But there's definitely utility in it. We talked about that a few weeks ago on the podcast. And, I think environment is an area in which I think is in need of an upgrade. I think this year the environment was mostly my apartment. So that's enough to just drive anyone insane. But I think, my location is important. I think, there's obviously a lot of benefits to where I was the last 2 years. I think being in a different environment shows the effect that environment plays. And so I think, I think for me, next year is about, or I would say the next few months are about thinking about where that next place, location, environment is, what's most suitable. Because I think, we're all getting older, right? I just had a birthday as well. And I want to find some place to land where I feel the environment itself is something that suits me. It provides the things I need, like good air quality, like the ability to hike regularly, like the ability to get to a downtown or somewhere that might open up in 5 years from now, that sort of thing. I think proximity to family is important, though not the first on the list. So, I think affordability is something I want to be able to I don't want to live this crazy lavish life, but I do want to have the ability to have a home and not break my back for it, because doing that then puts the importance back on work, and then it's that vicious cycle, and then it's like, oh yeah, then I need to be in a city, and then I'm in the city, and then it's like this sort of
they're knock-on effects.
Yeah. So just trying to find that balance, that equation of like a place that's dope that everyone hasn't moved into and jack the prices of rent up, but also or rent or a mortgage or whatever. That's on my mind. So I think that's a big thing. And then in terms of the business, as it relates to learning, actually, exactly. I mean, I had this moment the other day where I was on the phone with my accountant, super just like feeling anxious and incompetent around just a lot of the terminology and things that he was using. And I felt like I need more control over the bookkeeping and just an understanding there. And I realized like how much of that was emotional that I was feeling, and getting past that and getting that out of the way to see, well, what do I like? How do I like to learn? And then how can I apply that to learning the things I wanted to learn on that call? And then I did some mind mapping today and felt amazing. So,
classic Michael sentence.
Yeah, I did. But it was funny because it was like, well, what do I need to feel good learning? Like actually feel good learning. It's like, I need something visual. I need to be able to move things around and see it all coming together. And that, so for me, mind mapping was this thing that I had unlocked and discovered recently. Was like, whoa, that's a really suitable it's a suitable environment for information for me. So yeah, I really resonated with what you were saying. So yeah, I mean, I think to me next year, like for status in 2021, it's about just further refinement on what I'm trying to do, how I'm speaking with clients, how I'm even getting in the door with new clients, the work, the processes, just really refining each thing. I even made new folders the other day, literally divided by an executive, like C-level team. So it'd be like chief executive, technology, operations, marketing, and put all of the documents that I already had in a different organization into those, so that any time I'm working on any document, I'm wearing the hat of that person. And then I know in the future I could just delegate that folder to someone in the long-term future. But yeah, just being but in the short term, it's like, well, how can I be the best version of those things that I need to be to move things forward? So yeah, business-wise, really just trying to move things forward. Life-wise, environment, big thing. Navigating this COVID thing's tricky. But yeah, I think environment is the key thing for me.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's about all I got on that.
What about you, John? What about next year? Well, we've talked about it. We covered a lot of the work stuff. What about
I'm about to go out the comfort zone all next year.
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk for a second less about the mechanics of what next year is work-wise, because we've sort of teased it out pretty well over a couple of episodes as it happened. It was real time.
Yeah.
But what about the emotions around it, or the underlying principles that are driving it?
I'm listening to Michael, honestly, a lot. The environment. For someone that didn't ever and still to this day hasn't fallen in love with the city of Los Angeles, I'm in love with my space. I'm in love with my environment that I've created. So I'm lucky. So I feel good being in all the space that I have no other choice but to be in. And I'm hearing, knowing Michael so well, I'm hearing him talk about, his desires. We talked about on the phone a week or two ago too. Proximity. I mean, Los Angeles has proximity to so much of what you just said, is what you need, like the ability to be close to a downtown, hike, get good air. You have to get outside of the city to get the good air part, but, it exists. And I'm trying to be, I was listening to all of that, all of what Spider was talking about. And the thing that came to mind was I should just commit. I should just commit to Los Angeles for a while, right? And I've been here for, it'll be a decade. It's a decade. It's going to be 11 years next June. And I still don't love it. I still have one foot in, one foot out, right? And I'm listening to Michael talk, and I'm like, well, it has all the things, you know? I spent a lot of this summer in COVID getting out of the city for the first time in my life. I left twice a month to go up north, you know, to either near the beach or whether it was up in mountains around trees where there was hikes and walks, but also a city and could still get good food and access to nature and all the things that we're discussing. So I want to get better at that. I think I'm going to continue to do that. I'm sitting here also thinking to myself about the stresses of not being able to finish this week, even though I'm telling myself I'm taking off the 18th till the 4th. And I just thought to myself, that's it. Friday, I don't care what doesn't get finished. That's not happening till the next year. And if someone needs to finish it between the 18th and the 4th of January for some odd reason for a release independently, so be it. Find someone else to do it. So I want to get better at those boundaries. I want to get better at the word boundaries. I don't really like it. Like, I don't like the word truth like we're talking about. I'm uncomfortable with these words. Boundaries is a word. Like, someone says, I got to set boundaries. And I think to myself, do you have to? Like, and that's something that's going to obviously get pushed back because I think it's a necessary thing to do depending on a relationship. But
priorities, better word.
Yeah, but
priorities.
Maybe. Like, if you feel unsafe and you need to set boundaries, that's obviously something you need to do. But I'm talking a little bit more. You know, I can judge my safety, so I'm not in a place of needing to set boundaries with people that are close to me. I can just say, yeah, it's not my priority. I think that's a better word. So I'm going to just push that aside for the moment. I'm in a tough place today, honestly. I came into this wanting to celebrate your birthday, and I was really stoked. And then I brought up some sad news, and I'm kind of in a really odd, I'm not really sure what next year brings, only because what you kind of blew my mind with is like that I feel ready to take on whatever I need to take on. And I felt that way for the last 5 years of my life. Something comes up, I'm going to do it. Michael's sick, I'm going to be there for him. Like, I'm going to be there for anybody that needs me to be there. I'm going to be there for myself when I need to be. And I want to get as good as I can at that. So it's tough because when you're talking, it was another thing I was thinking about because I was listening to every word and kind of just sitting here. We're on a podcast, and our niche audience are audio engineers, right? Audio engineers are not going to hire me to do anything, right? Because audio engineers want to do what I do. So I can actually have this is like a pretty safe space for me because I can say things, and I'm not like, someone's not going to come to me because I'm trying to prioritize myself from this audience, right? No one's going to say, well, I don't want to work with him because he's going to, prioritize himself over me every step of the way. So it's kind of a safe space to talk about all these things. But I'd also want a client or an artist or a manager or another team to come work with me next year because I have those priorities, aligned, and that I care enough about myself, my art, my people, my family, my clients to work on that. And Michael's either so good at it or so good at talking about it. And I think he's really good at it, or at some point he will be so good at what I'm talking about doing because he bravely left. Like, he's done something that I think about doing on the regular, which is leave behind what the comfort zone is, the safety net. Like, for him, it's the corporate structure that he was a part of for however many years. And for me, I think about that idea and then going like cook in a restaurant in like the south of France where nobody knows, anything about me except for the fact that I make a mean cardamom saffron latke and serving it in Lyon. So it's like,
I was going to say somewhere where they've never heard of Khalid, but that may not be anywhere.
Yeah. So these are the dreams that I have. Like I wake up and I'm working in a bakery, right? Like I don't actually want to do that, right? So these dreams don't mean anything other than the fact that I know that there has to be more than what I do. So if I can get a step closer to that, kind of the bravery to say I don't need to do this now, it'll and I know it will still come next year. Sounds like a good place to be. It sounds like, and it's a good reflection podcast because we've also talked about this in earlier episodes where I think it's a privilege to be able to say no. Mm-hmm. So I want to at least bring that up here as well. I think it's a privilege for me. Like I heard you Rory talk about, like living the upper middle class life and everything's kind of handled to a degree. Like I'm borderline that, I don't have like a deep, rich savings account. I'm a mix engineer, I'm not a hit songwriter. I haven't bought a house yet, but I'm covered for a while. Like, I can pay my employee. I can, I'm at a good place. So, and I can be honest about that, but I am definitely not where I want to be. But then I think while thinking those things and hearing you speak and hearing me speak out loud is, maybe if I was in another place where I'm at now would be more than enough versus enough. And hearing Michael talk about these things, like these are all the reflection points. So I don't know what next year looks like, but I hope for society's sake, it looks better than this year for the majority of humans, meaning a vaccine happens and we could exist. Well, a vaccine did happen. Hopefully for mass usage in the next 6 months. But for me personally, I really don't know, and I love that I don't know. And when it happens, we'll all know, because as we discussed on this podcast, we're all going to be together for each other. So when something comes up, we're all going to go, oh, remember that time we talked about that? Like, here, use me now. I'm here for you because you need me. This is the moment, and we're going to know it without saying it. And that to me is the most inspiring thing I've heard a friend say all year or most of my life. So it's hard for me to think anything else other than that at the moment. So I'm kind of bringing everything back to that moment because that's something I truly aspire. And I do it for clients and I do it for friends. I know that I embody that. I've never been able to say it out loud. And so I hope next year is living that. And it kind of starts with, I kind of want to get back to my dad for a minute and like be there during this like kind of time. So I'm trying to sort that part out without having to fly back. So I'm going to go to New York in January. But before that, I just got to figure out how to be there from a distance. So I think that's important. And I'm not good at that part. And I'll say that loudly for other people that relate to me. I'm not really good at checking in.
Yeah.
Dads love FaceTiming with their sons.
We've never FaceTimed. We FaceTimed once because my girlfriend made us, and it was a great time. We've never done it. We're not a FaceTime family. My mom just complains about how she looks. My mom is sweet and cute looking, and she's fine. She shouldn't think this way, but she does. And my dad just sits there like half face in the screen. It's like
you need practice.
Yeah. So I'm gonna do it again.
Show him filters. You could add filters.
I don't even know what filters do. I've never done a filter, so I don't know where.
Whatever the half face game is, my dad crushes.
Does he?
Like he's
always half in the frame.
Always.
And my mom's like wishing she was half in the frame, but she's full in the frame, turning away. Like it was the one and only time. We're gonna do it again before Christmas and then on Christmas Day. So that'll be 3 times. But really, it's girlfriend pushing for stuff like that. I don't know. I call. I text.
No, like if you're there, the talking is where the healing takes place. That's where like the grieving is processed. It's where the challenge is settled. So when you're there at the house, it's a sort of, you end up just talking about, but it's really not necessarily directly about the thing. So, it may take effort. I know it does for me. With my family, I have it set in the calendar now because just to make sure it gets done every week.
Oh, nice.
And it goes a long way, especially for them, especially for parents.
Yeah,
I think
more so. Yeah,
it goes a long way. But I think the volume of conversation might matter in times like these. You know, so the daily check-in might be a thing, or, you know,
reps or whatever.
Yeah. You get more comfortable with the video. I know at the end of this year, I have deeper connections over the internet than I did at the beginning of the year because I've practiced it so much.
Proud of you.
I don't know. I avoid it. Not with just family, but with most people. Like, I just avoid it.
I have very easy communication with my parents. So maybe it's not a useful data point, but something that I find almost always lands is when I reach out to share something that came to mind. So the other day, Thanksgiving, Spider came for dinner with me and Sydney and the kids, and I got a notion. We wanted Calvados. We've had really warm experiences with Calvados in France. It evokes all sorts of wonderful memories for us. So I went to buy Calvados, couldn't get it, and bought Armagnac, which I love and we love, and brought to mind a memory with my parents of a trip to Paris, where I took my parents to Paris when I was very young. There was context, which is an episode unto itself, but I was in Paris with my parents and a girlfriend at the time, and it was my mom's birthday, and we went to a restaurant, and the restaurant was recommended by the clerk at the hotel. You know, we're staying in a $100 a night hotel, whatever. And lovely, you know, girl, you know, where should we eat tonight? Go down here, turn left, turn right, ask for Jose or whatever. Cool. Okay, great. Went in, you know, I had French, I did okay, and had this incredible meal, amazing service. And at the end of dinner, the whole back wall of the restaurant was stone, and they had Armagnac from every year from the turn of the century to today, or that was 20 years ago, to then, 2000-ish, except a couple of the war years. And so it turned out my mom was born on 46, maybe 46. And so we were like, do you have a 46? We're going to have 46 Armagnac. And they were like, no, you know, and they explained the war thing and, you know, showed us the wall, like, look at the gap here, look at the gap here. Okay, so my mom was, my parents married in 60-something, 67 or something. You have 67? Yeah, we got 67. Great. And they pulled out brandy glasses that, you know, a small child could have swam in. I mean, they were enormous, like huge tumblers. And the guy just free poured like it was, you know, like it was water. Just like, I mean, it was not in any way, you know, it was a giant pour. And we drank Armagnac, and it was incredible. And, you know, everything about it was incredible. We were in Paris, they were generous, we were connected with history. It was just an amazing moment. And it came to mind when I was holding the bottle of Armagnac in the kitchen, getting ready for Spider to come over. So I called my mom, and my joy, vulnerability, whatever you want around the memory, just immediately she just started filling in all the blanks. She was like, the tablecloth was this, the back wall was this, the waiter was 6 foot tall, he had a mustache, you remember him? He made a joke about this. And my mom is like in her 70s. Yeah. And she's just like, she was recalling the two of us put together the puzzle piece of this meal. I was like, I think it was down this street and we turned right near the church. And she was like, no, it was here, it was this. And it was an amazing, warm moment of connection. It was a 10-minute call while we were cleaning up the house for Spider to come over. But I've had quite often the girls will do something, they'll play a game. Like today they did a puppet show for me for my birthday with dinosaurs. Amazing. And it reminds me of something. I'll take a video and send it to her, my mom or whatever. But it reminds me of something we did, and she'll start telling stories about that, you know. So just these, I find it to be a great jumping off point when sometimes it's kind of like, you feel like I should call my mom and I'm in a funk and I'm going to tell her that, you know, my tax refund came back, but it was $3,000 short of what it should have been. And the accountant doesn't know why. Like, that's where your head is at the day. You don't have anything. So I find like when I have something joyful to share, a funny memory, I just do it. I just send a message or send a voice message or a little video message or just FaceTime or whatever, you know? So I don't know if that's useful to anyone.
I sent a picture of my Christmas tree with gifts underneath it to them yesterday. That made their night, yeah. Yeah.
It's good. It's a simple thing. Yeah. They can take pride in it, you know?
Yeah.
I think it's important that we say that we don't know what's going to happen next year. So when we ask the question about next year, it's not like, what do you think is going to happen? Or, you know,
it's not a prediction.
What are you in control of next year? Fucking nothing, bro. Like nothing. But
same as it was last.
Yeah, but sort of this intention. Something else. I don't know if this will land for anyone. Something else that I've been, and I don't know why, in the last couple of months is sort of really trying to understand my feelings, like around regret for things I've done, people I've let down, relationships that I've lost, friendships that went sour, or people I hurt, or things I said, or whatever, moments, and I feel a sort of a compulsion to tidy up some loose ends before the end of the year. I'm not usually a big finish the year, New Year's resolutions kind of guy.
Same.
But this year I'm feeling the need to reach out to some people, some of whom I haven't spoken to in a long time, and just kind of make peace, or say something about what happened, or say, hey, we're not friends anymore, but I valued when we were, or whatever, something that's on my mind, and I don't really know why it's so present now.
I've had versions of this, and I've been skeptical of where the benefit would lie. If I'm doing it for me, or if I'm doing it for them, there's a sort of selfish version of this.
Sure. Yeah.
That it's a hard thing to, it's been a hard thing for me to contemplate,
What does a non-selfish version of it look like?
Well, it's where there's where it's still open in someone else's mind, and you can help close it.
And you can't know if it is or it isn't.
And you can't know if it is or isn't.
Because you're not in touch with them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I wonder, is there a way to... I'm thinking of one relationship in particular that got quite damaged, that was very important to me. And I'm wondering if there's a way to sort of offer your thoughts on it without expectation. To say, hey, I don't know or expect or think that you're feeling anything about what happened, but this is what I feel about it, and here's how I mean to move forward, or here's my piece, but with no expectation, with no price for you. Like, you can look at this and go, fuck that guy, or you can look at it and go, oh, yeah, I felt the same way, or I'm sorry too, or whatever, So
create opportunity.
Create opportunity without expectation. Does that make sense?
Does.
Well, it opens the door for forgiveness.
Yeah. There's the situation I'm thinking of. I've lost track of who was in the wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe we both were, and neither of us were. And
it's usually more than one person.
There were mixed. There was an inconsistent sense of what was happening in the moment because of things people were projecting. In this case, kind of false strength, which is a mode that this person used in their life. Like, everything's okay, everything's good, I'm good, but they were hurting, and I didn't. I maybe didn't step up enough for them in the moment. As someone that I'm very close to, a family member. So I'm wondering.
Family this is an added.
Yeah, this would be as
detail.
As family relationships go. This would be pretty pure. This is someone I could do meta with. Or I certainly could have. This is a very warm relationship. And I don't want to say who, because they'll hear it. But my point is, I wonder if there's I get your concern, and I've had that, and I think that at previous moments in my life I was looking for that. In kind of unhealthy ways. But right now I'm feeling like that there might be something to be gained by just sort of reaching out, but in that no expectation way. And just saying that, I'd like to say my piece about what happened, and also just a chance to restate what really matters. So this thing that is outsized in our minds, this moment in our life, has become distorted in, our sense of scale is out of whack. So we have this 40-year relationship, but this thing looms large. And let's put it back into perspective. If it was my fault, I'm sorry. If it was your, I don't have any expectations, but let's put things back in scale. Let's remember that the 40-year relationship or the 45-year relationship is what matters more.
What about just an invitation to talk?
I think that might be scary, for the...
So?
But maybe what I'm talking about is an invitation to talk, is it not? Do you think it...
Yeah, but I mean...
Well, then there's a...
Depends on the context.
Expectation to discuss something that might not need to be discussed the first time one talks.
So we talk all the time. I talked to her today. So,
well, okay.
But, so it's not
different. Yeah.
I've got all kinds of assumptions I'm bringing to this.
Clearly. Well,
that don't match.
And I'm trying to talk in generalities to again, this effort to see if we can make it useful, and mindful of our conversation at dinner, John. I want to, but I just wonder, it's an interesting thing that's been rattling around my brain this last month or two is the want or the need to address some old lingering stuff, because I find, much like these work commitments that I said I've let go, these commitments to represent some people, friends and people that I'm really fond of, but that we're just taking time and attention. So this sort of, I'd like to put down some baggage and carry it, be a little bit lighter in the way that I'm moving forward next year,
I think my head goes to the plainest way to say things. Like a direct question, like, is this thing that happened between us still bothering you?
You've never spent time in Ireland, my friend.
What do you mean?
That is, I could stick a fork in her eye and it would be less offensive. Like, honestly, that's not how we do things where I come from.
Huh?
I'm serious. This is you know what we should do? Huh? You know what we should do is you talk about Downton Abbey all the time. You have to know this.
The roundaboutness. I get it.
The roundaboutness is everything where I come from. There is no, so we'll just get my wife. She can take my seat some night and talk about 10 years of this in her life, because we have some remarkable.
Well, that's where you came from, but that's not where you are.
It's not, but I have to be.
There's got to be a middle ground there.
What is it that we do in our work and in our communication? We try to meet people where they're at.
They are.
Yes,
not drag them to my reality.
Yeah. Well, that makes it especially challenging then.
Yeah. And given what you said, John, of not trying to figure people out, what I'm thinking is I have these regrets that I carry, and I'm wondering maybe if other people have the inverse, whatever they have, the other part of that, right? The piece that pairs with it. And I'd like to put them down. I'd like to let them go. I'd like to move past them. But I don't expect them to do anything. I can't expect them to do anything. I can't understand what they're thinking. I can't get in their heads. I can't figure them out. So a way of offering, an opening for communication without expecting it. That's kind of what I've been thinking of this last minute,
But could I step in for a
second?
Yeah,
I love that. Yeah.
It seems like you already have the communication happening, and for the other person, they may or may not have let go of what it is that you're now letting go of. You know what I mean? So and it wasn't because of them that you're letting go of it. It was something that happened for you.
I want to,
in your own.
Yeah.
I mean, you're saying 40 years. I don't know how long it took to actually get to this point. It might take them longer, or maybe it happened 15 years ago. They were over it, and and you're still holding on. I wonder if there's utility in, like, what the utility is in bringing it up. If you're saying there's no expectation, then what do you expect?
I think I will. The thing that came to mind, again, a lot of these thoughts maybe are out of maybe supporting my friend who's gone through the bumpy patch. And I was talking about the concept of, in AA, when you make amends and the importance of making amends, but the fact that you just can't expect them to be received well. There's no obligation on the other person to say, if you fucked them around for years or whatever you did, they may not be open to answering the call, responding to the email, or they may slam a door in your face and say, fuck you and fuck you forever. But you will have done your part. You will have shown up with your best self or your best offering. not showing up with a relitigation of the facts. Well, actually, what I think happened is you did this and I did this.
But what if you showing up digs up old shit for them? Like, this is what I mean. Like,
that's a good question.
It's an imposition one way or another. If it's,
that's a good point. So you would have to weigh. If the opportunity for sort of moving past something for you and for them is worth. Yeah, I can think of, I'm thinking of the various ones that are in my mind, and some of them could be an imposition and some of them definitely wouldn't be. Couldn't be, almost certainly couldn't be. Anyway, I don't know that it's all that interesting for other people.
I don't know that letting go is a group effort to, I think making amends is one thing, right? In this case, it seems like a lingering thing with someone you're in regular contact with. And this is what confuses me. If you can't talk directly about it.
Well, to talk directly about it with this, it's way too subtle and complicated even for this forum. But this person
is a huge look, listen to how vague our conception of like handling regret or lingering difficulties in relationships is to even just talk about.
Yeah. That's why it's been so on my mind, and maybe why, as clumsy as it is worth sort of exploring, because I doubt there's someone listening who doesn't have something that they regret. I mean, it's a human thing. If you've lived and you've communicated, you've probably done or said something that you regret. And I certainly don't spend all day there. I'm not I didn't run over a kid with my car, and I don't have this giant sort of classic case of regret or whatever, but there are relationships that were damaged that I would like the opportunity to repair them.
Question for you.
Yeah.
Leading question. Is part of why this is difficult for you because the person you were, the values you might have now, weren't aligned with the person that you were then?
Yeah, it's a really insightful question. I was always the most direct person in my circle. We don't do direct where I come from. And you don't do anything directly. The Chinese concept of saving face, right? You don't call someone on things. It's considered improper, right? And in Ireland, we have a version of that. It's just everything happens circuitously. Everything happens in roundabout. Everything happens abstractly. And a lot of things happen. You don't say something to someone directly. You say it to someone else, and they say it to someone else, and they say it, because there's a chain of connection that's easier for the message to land or whatever. It's kind of politics, and it's kind of infuriating, and it's kind of beautiful. It's wild, but it's where I come from, and it gives me. I've always been sort of more direct. If you compare, American culture is very direct. If you need something, you say, I need something.
Yeah.
And, I talked with a friend one time, used to be a synth programmer for Duran Duran. And he said, listen, this is.
Who hasn't been a synth programmer for Duran Duran?
This is true. Yeah, there was a lot of synths. But we had a dinner one night and he was saying, listen, this is a country of immigrants. The German immigrant and the Chinese immigrant, they both have basic English and one of them needs something. So he's going to say, give me the wine. There's no dance there. They don't have the language or the time or the inclination to do a dance around it. There's no abstraction. It's just like, I need this. It's commerce. It's this direct thing. I think there's definitely some truth there. Where I come from, it's the exact opposite. Our history is as a country that was, occupied or oppressed, however you want to frame it, for a long time. And the religion and the language were banned. And everything happened by subterfuge. The music, secret house parties, the drinking was banned. Everything was secret. So you never said anything directly. If you wanted to ask Mary to the secret house party where the music was playing at the end of the village, you didn't say, Mary, want to go to the house party? There was a whole thing. There was a whole way around it. There was words you could use in the company of someone who shouldn't know about it that would communicate the message. So everything is with a nod and a wink where I come from. And it's given us some of the the premier writers and poets.
It's very clever, clever thinking.
Yeah, it's
to say things in code and
and there's beautiful color to it.
But this roundaboutness has deeper history in the region. I mean, it's not just Ireland.
Sure.
It's like the number of idioms in British English is insane.
Oh yeah,
and it's sort of a pendulum swing, maybe too far the other way from barbarity. It's a way of not upsetting people. It's a way of, which, you can look at the positive intentions. All I'm saying is there's a background of this prior to this sort of, this need for secrecy.
Sure.
In that way.
Definitely.
It's a very deep cultural thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the main thing is that being direct, where I come from in Ireland, is very aggressive. It's a very aggressive move, and it rarely ends well. There's very few people who can speak that robustly because they're not practiced at it. And so it would be a very useless way to approach most situations, to lay it on the table and say, listen, this happened. What would often happen in a situation, if I were to lay out the truth of this, my understanding of the facts in person and say, I think this happened, the other party would close up. There would be bluster, defensiveness, and the conversation would end. And
you violated norms.
You would violate norms, and it would just be. I mean, I'm using the language. It would be considered very aggressive. It sounds dramatic, but it actually is an act of aggression.
No, I get it.
It would be like if I said to you, "Listen, Spider, I need you to come and collect your bag left in my house. I've asked you 3 times to get the bag. I can ask you, hey, Spider, the Sydney's on to me about the bag. Maybe you could pick up the bag."
Yeah.
But so it would be like elevating that to screaming in your face, catching you by the lapels and saying, "Get the fucking
relative
bag."
difference is the same.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's that scale change. So, anyway, that's an aside. A little cultural tour of Ireland there. But anyway, I don't know why that. I mean, I do know why, because it's of this help with my friend and maybe some of his regrets around stuff that's happened. But even before then, I've been thinking it's a theme for me at the end of the year. I remember things, and as I remember, say, things that I did with my wife over the years, I try and address them as they come up in my mind, Remember that time I said that thing? I'm sorry about that, Like things I'm embarrassed about or whatever,
Well, but there's a context of mutual benefit there, right?
Yeah.
So, that's what I'm assessing, whether or not to bring up a regret with someone. Obviously there's lesser and more severe versions of this, right?
Sure.
So lesser ones, you're not so concerned. They can be casually brought up and put to bed. I think when you're thinking of the utility of broaching a subject, you're trying to measure or weigh the probability of it being beneficial to both of you. And that's the piece I have a hard time with. I don't know how you do that without talking about it. I mean, I guess you could tell your neighbor, who tells the baker, who tells the tea merchant, who then asks them like 3 weeks later, and then they send a pigeon, and
I think,
that's what I mean. It's kind of a
well, I think there's a way. I think there's a way in most of the cases that are on my mind. It's something extreme, like, let's say you murdered someone's son and you're haunted by you got in a bar fight, you knocked the kid over, he slammed his head in the table corner and died. And you did time and you're haunted by regret, right? I'm being extreme as like a thought experiment or whatever.
Yes.
And you're haunted by it. You've done your time. and you feel this regret at the you know, you were drunk, you took a swing, you weren't trying to kill someone. Reaching out to the mom of that kid, that's very questionable move.
That's what I mean. This puts it into perspective.
Yeah. So, you know, and at the other end, sorry, Michael, just to finish the point, at the other end, there's this thing of these weird misunderstandings that sort of something goes sour and no one outside or in can really articulate what happened, but it's difficult to move past, you know. And in that situation, I think the sort of offering of like, I don't know what happened, and I don't know, I'll never know what you thought, but if I was wrong, I'm sorry. And more importantly, I valued what we had, and I would like to have something with you in the future. That to me, at that end of the scale, at the opposite end to murder one or, you know, manslaughter, I feel like there might be some utility in it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I'm living that right now, but yeah.
Yeah?
That version of it, yeah.
Right. Cool. Yeah, I don't know. Sorry, that was a bit of a...
No, I liked it all. I'm having a hard time wanting to communicate ideas. They're not coming, so I'm just listening and really enjoying these perspectives. I'm having a hard time communicating right now.
It's called conversations. It's just like conversations. Sometimes they're different.
I think everything you're saying is extremely valid, and everyone has what you're talking about. I think Spider is doing a great job pointing out a distinction of burdening someone else with your need when there's no benefit to that person that could come from it, or that they're potentially even over it and don't want to be reminded of it. And you have no idea where people are at. And I like what you're talking about, is trying to meet people where they're at. This is what we do all the time. And I think equally as important is to allow people to meet you where you're at. And that might mean being direct and saying and expressing your needs. I mean, it's not until I've expressed my needs in relationships that I actually get them met. And so to say it's an American thing is tricky for me to, though I understand, like, I didn't come from a place of direct, asks as well. And I'm not culturally anything else but American mostly, I mean, grew up in a pretty Greek family, but around a lot of people that didn't speak English, but I think culturally we're pretty American in a lot of senses. So I can't use that as an excuse. But the moment I get confident to be direct in communication is when I'm met with the most respect, and the needs are met. So I see a lot of utility in that. So if it's a cultural thing, that's
there's a version of that in all cultures that involve various degrees of directness, it seems, and roundaboutness, where there's a sort of normal version of directness that apparently in Ireland involves a couple other people in between.
Well, I should clarify
that middle school.
It's the version of directness.
It's not communication.
Wait, hold on. I'm just having a revelation. Is this where the term Chinese whispers came from?
We talked about that. Yeah, we mentioned it a few weeks ago.
Did we?
I don't
because I heard this on another podcast recently.
I haven't looked
telephone also.
Yeah, we were talking about telephone and
is that
Chinese
where this
whispers.
comes from?
Yeah, it was from our podcast.
It's from our podcast?
Yes.
I rarely listen to ours. Okay, interesting. That was definitely that.
Let me just make one point that in Ireland, we communicate very effectively. We just don't communicate directly.
That's what I'm saying.
It's very effective. It's lyrical and it's beautiful and it can be emotive and powerful, but it isn't direct. So that's an important thing to say. Yeah. If I have a message to get to someone, I can absolutely get the message
across.
To them. Yeah. It's just the way you would do it is very different. Right. And if you don't speak that language, you will miss it. And if you're waiting for someone to say something direct, it'll never come.
Here, culturally in the US, we conflate directness with the message getting across.
Yeah, yes. Right.
You see what I mean?
Right.
Because that's just how we think about
things are done.
It's being A to B. It's uncorrupted. There's no opportunity for corruption.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Michael, I cut you off a moment ago, and
I had 3 things actually.
Do it.
So you had said when you were sort of rehearsing what you might say is like, if I was wrong, I'm sorry, but this is what I would like in the future, or I want to move forward in the future, right? And so I kind of broke that apart a little bit. So because when you said if I was wrong, that immediately I was like, okay, the if part, like in your mind, were you wrong? Like, do you feel wrong? And wrong, I mean like not aligned with the person you want to be.
In the case that we were talking about, no, but given my misread of the situation, it might have been insensitive at the moment, the way that I moved, because
that's a soft wrong.
Yeah, it's a pretty soft wrong altogether. Yeah, it's a soft wrong.
It's a wrong, but it's a soft wrong.
Exactly. Yeah. Again, there was,
But I mean, let's not even quantify the level of wrong, because to someone it could be a 10. So, I mean, like, I think, like, to your point, it wasn't intentional, you're saying, but it was. There was a level of harm caused, you're saying.
And I don't even know what the level of harm was, but this relationship that would have been incredibly close now has a pane of glass between us, and it looks like we're close, but we're not anymore. Okay. You know what I mean? Does that land?
Yeah. So that helps me with part 1. Part 2, you said like, I want to move forward. And immediately I just thought of the word action plan from, I think, the last conversation we had or the one before. But this idea of like an action plan, like what is the plan? Like what does it look like moving forward? What would you like?
It looks like, imagine walking 40 years with someone at your side, and all of a sudden you both have both of your feet bound together. So you're kind of hobbling or hopping, and you're still making progress, but it's kind of weird and constrained and awful. I feel like I'd like to cut those binds and just start walking again. We're really good at walking. We know how to walk together, me and this person. Just get back to ourselves. Get back to kind of an uncorrupted thing. In the scale of, you think about these moments the Spider described where things get recalibrated fast. When that moment comes in either of our lives, there could be a 7-second conversation. I'm so sorry. I don't know what the fuck happened. I don't know what that was. Right. I don't give a fuck about that anymore. I love you. I'm sorry. Like, what are we going to do about Dad?
That's what I was thinking. Can you skip to that part where you express how you feel about each other, or that you miss someone?
That's the move that I'm trying to
skip to the end of that whole thing and see if it doesn't just.
I know that
so ideal.
I've said it to my wife before. I've said, like, listen, I've done that sort of the thought experiment of like, listen, if one of us got 3 months to live right now, it's like we would, especially in the context of what you've said tonight, John, about your uncle, and it would recalibrate you very fast, So, and I know that if that moment came, this lingering hurt, or this thing that's between us, would just evaporate. So I want to do that. I want to make it happen, but I want to do it in a way that isn't. Actually, think I'm, maybe for the purpose of conversation, or maybe to illuminate it or whatever, I'm making more of this than it is. I know how to do this. I'm probably pretty good at it. Certainly in this case, I know I can do it. A couple of other ones maybe further back that will be trickier, but in this one, I think I know, and I'm comfortable. I think I appreciate your question around the potential selfishness.
Is it culturally? Is there a directness with this sort of displays of emotion, like love and
we do okay with that
missing
stuff.
People.
We do okay with that. Yeah, okay with that generally. There's usually that happens after alcohol where I come from, but yeah,
I love you, man.
It does happen. Yeah.
Well, you just said something that sounded. We have it recorded, which is great, but it sounded like the perfect way to present that, which is like, the reality is, if I knew I had 3 months to live, this would be something that pained me to leave lingering.
Yeah.
You just said that. And I think there's no blame in that statement.
No.
There's no expectations in that statement. That's genuinely what you feel because you just said it. And I think that is so elegant.
That's the footing.
And so true.
Yeah, you're right. That's sort of the heart of it. Maybe it was worth spending 20 minutes talking about this.
Yeah.
Maybe. I think it's been more than that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm looking at Pro Tools.
You said what you wanted from us is to know when you needed us to show up. So.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah, that's good, man. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, happy birthday, man.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
May you not collect any regrets.
We started off pretty high getting...
I don't feel sad at all. I feel I actually feel no, I don't feel sad at all.
Okay,
I feel
good.
really I'm actually
good.
I actually feel even more grateful right now. Weirdly. So
that's not weird.
No, but yeah. Great. I mean it's a you're talking about hurts or other people's hurts, but I don't feel sad talking about it. So maybe the listeners are like, this is a fucking downer, but I don't feel that way.
Let it be.
Yeah.
Let it be.
Yeah. So what else do we want to talk about?
This feels like this is like us having a conversation at the end of the year, which I really like the vibe of it.
I feel like we're pretending
totally
it's like New Year's Eve or something.
Well, it's, I mean, it is it's the last time we're going to see each other.
Potentially,
At the end of the year, you have this news of family, John, and I just turned 45. There's kind of a poignancy to today, so we are in that mode, I think, and as well, we're certainly for me and you, John, and me and you, Michael, we're sort of new stages of our friendships. You know what I mean? We're in new, more honest. Different things are happening for us over the last while where we're sort of finding new levels to our relationship that we wouldn't have had before. So this is kind of an end of year wrap up for us. So it is kind of our our New Year's moment. Just sort of happening.
I have a really solid relationship with something Michael said earlier, which is the work distraction, or the creative distraction, whatever. You abstracted it out to work, and I think that was really important. But when you get certain news or something just really affects you, I'm normally pretty good at being like, that's okay. Just like pretty optimistic about life, like, oh, maybe it'll be all right. And for some reason, I can't kick this one. And like, so, you're saying, I'm just grateful. Like, could be a downer to some people. And I normally share that, and I just can't feel that way right now. But maybe I'll know, more next week or something, and be able to have a different recap of the year than, feeling lingered on. I'm so glad that this is to me, it sounds like you're at a place that you're normally not at as well. Like this is a different place for you, to be able to feel that way, and kind of vice versa for me on the opposite frontier.
Yeah, I think
I have a pretty solid relationship with death. I'm not really afraid of it. When it happens to someone, I grieve really late, like in the moment. I'm kind of like, trying to be there to support, whether it's family or friends, like it's going to be okay, optimistic, and for some reason, because the amount of identification that I might have with someone, like in certain values, that maybe that's why it's affecting me so much. It's like I share so much of this.
You recognize yourself in him.
Yeah, it's like a wild kind of realization to have, where I can't get myself to the other side of what you're like. I hear your words as my norm, and it's so interesting to be so outside of yourself, and you're reflecting it back at me, and I still can't see it. It's kind of wild. I don't really know how to describe it, except for that, how I just did.
Yeah, you just did it pretty well, actually. Yeah.
it's like it takes when you're a teenager and you become a young adult and you become an adult, and hopefully along that journey you'll be able to look at yourself a little bit longer in the mirror. Like in the morning you're either shaving or brushing your teeth. You're like, oh, that's me. I'm okay with that guy or that girl or whoever I am.
When does this kick in?
I don't know. I'm hoping at some point it does. Right. I'm just like, it kicked in like last year for me. I'm turning 35 in a couple of months. And I'm seeing that version of myself in a mirror, and it's just not me, and it's wild, and it's like more so than actually looking into it.
You're leveling up in your life experience, and spoiler alert, there's more coming. I've got 10 years on you, and it, and I wouldn't swap it for anything. The sort of, we have a sort of a culture that's obsessed with youth, but I wouldn't want it back.
No, same.
The sort of peace you make as you get a little bit older with things is really valuable to me, So yeah, there's just, I think you're in a new moment for you, something different, and
That strikes me pretty hard because a lot of people relate to this, I'm sure, but I always hung out with adults at the parties. Like I was always friends with kids that are 4+ years older than me. So thinking about, and I recently talked to my girlfriend about this, I didn't realize that he was there too, but I had my first sip of beer. I think I was like 14 years old. It was a Coors Light, and my dad gave it to me. And my Uncle Larry, who I'm talking about, was there for the first one. I'm just thinking like, oh wow, that goes that far back to like first beer, and this person is like in the scene in this image. It's just a wild thing. And so the want to be I don't want to be young. Like I don't care. I never wanted to be. I always wanted to be. I don't want that maybe we'll cut to 65. Rory, you're 75. We're hanging out really nice, like 25-year age McAllen or something. Maybe we can afford it then.
Yeah.
And
titanium knee.
And and we're like, damn, remember when we were 45, 35 talking about death?
We could set up a podcast here in 15 minutes.
Maybe we'll change our mind, but until then.
So the mode that you think you're ordinarily pretty good at, the sort of gratitude mode, you're having a hard time switching into right now.
It's impossible. I'm not having a hard time. I don't know how to.
Yeah, it's crisis, man. Come on. I mean, this is.
Yeah.
And what is the feeling at the moment? Fear, or is it sort of preemptive loss? Are you in the loss part already? Are you sort of getting into that mode?
Trying not to, because everyone else in the family is optimistic for some odd reason to me. And I'm gonna fall in line there. I'm gonna try to be that, definitely, at least inwardly in the family. Outwardly on this podcast, I'm not quite sounding that way.
Yeah.
But I don't even know if they listen, so it's probably, I don't think they do. Do they even know what a podcast is? Oh yeah, they do, because I send them glucose information podcasts. On that note, it wasn't until my dad read a book about carbohydrates and the possibility that grain can affect your stomach in weird ways that he tried not eating it until he felt better. And I've been telling him this for 10 years by sending him podcasts. So speaking of the messages that are, instead of direct, that landed when he decided to read a book.
People talking about it wasn't enough. It was a book made it real.
Cumulative.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm kind of making a joke to the dance around of messages. I'm not at a point of loss. I'm at a point of disconnection. So I feel like the one time of year where I'm supposed to feel connected to my family is at this time, and I do really well at it. Like I love going there and being there one time. So what I guess I'm getting at is that the one time of the year that I would do this and show up, because I think a quality that I possess is when I'm somewhere with someone, like I'm going to show up there every time as much as I can. Like that's something that I work on. I don't think it's something that just comes naturally. So I show up when I go home and I'm there and I'm not policing my dad's eating habits or telling him what to do. I'm just letting him be. And like Michael talking about watching Narcos on the couch, like let's just watch something on the couch and hang out. And like that's enough in our family. It would seem, and I can't do that. So I don't think that's a loss. I think it's disconnection. Like I said earlier, I'm not good at reaching out, so I'm good at isolating. I love not talking, as opposite of being on a podcast, and being a host of an evening where you talk. But
listen to Jon Castelli talk about not talking.
But
live.
But I if for the public ear, if we talk for 2 hours today and I talk for 1 hour on Tuesday, that's 3 hours of talking. Multiply that by 21, and that's by the time I spend not talking, right? So that's like,
last question on this. Do you feel, is there a disconnect between, you're talking about the sort of the typical connection at the holidays for you with your family, and now you feel a disconnect or kind of out of sync? Is it because you're sort of internalizing this moment differently to them? Do you feel, is that why you think you feel out of sync, or is it just the COVID Christmas, like can't get home thing?
It's probably a little bit of both. I haven't thought about the latter yet at all.
Yeah.
I mean, doing it now, sure. I mean, they have this odd sense of optimism, and I'm like, 20% survival rate? That's not a good rate, Like, I'm just going by the book of like what. Oh, but in respect to what it used to be for this, like that's cool. Sure, that's hopeful, like that's hopeful, but that's some religious stuff to me, like that the ability to feel hope and faith is something that I just don't like.
It's
I
in
don't
God's
embody
hands.
anymore.
We don't have that kind of idea. It's gonna be, it's really useful.
So I don't have I don't have it, but I don't have it.
I see the merit.
Yeah,
I'm not signing up, but I see the merit.
So I'm glad you asked that. It's probably a bit of both. I mean, Michael and I talked, I think, about it a little bit last week. We're supposed to get on the phone. We never actually had a chance to do that. But yeah, I miss New York and the option of going home, like a lot. I just look forward to that season change, and not only for the snow possibility and cold, but leaving work and coming back to it, for someone that's so involved in their work and it's so much of their life. I just look for it as a reset for so many ways. So it's going to be harder for me to force my own reset living in the same space as my speakers, it's just going to be hard. It's just, and I'm sure a lot of other people are going to feel this way too, that are going to hear this. Like, so that's a forced reset, built in with family time, built in with the energy of New York City time, which fills me with so much joy. I know it wouldn't be the same during COVID, potentially. I still think I'd get it because I know what it's like to go to New York when you're, a teenager and not have any money, and just experience New York without going to things because I just didn't have any money. Just, hopping on the train or whatever. So there's a lot that I'm going to miss this year that I'm, and there's going to be a lot that a lot of other people will miss that are bigger than what I'm going to miss, right? Someone I'm sure could have lost someone that they won't. And like, it already beat me to the punch of I might not actually lose this person. How likely it is or not is irrelevant, but this is my reality at the moment. And it's not as good of a December 17th that I would want it to be. If that's what the day is, 18th? 16th?
17th over here.
We
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to say like there's a silver lining, but these sorts of moments, difficulty, deaths in the family, this stuff has a way of bringing people together, and everyone's in the midst of challenge, and that is the focal point, but what's going on in the background can be, really positive. And it's part of the human story, it's part of the circle. I mean, there's new life coming, there's life going. We all come to terms with it, and we all can deepen as a result. We can empathize with other people, sympathize with other people in a more meaningful way, in a way that is more helpful. to them in a way that does deepen human connection. Mm-hmm. And so, I think the quality of the time we spend together and in a way, the quality of our collective grief, like our grieving, is something to marvel at, frankly. I mean, it's an incredible system of resilience that we have. It's complex and hard to understand. But we've all been through stuff, and we know it. We know that, I am closer to my family after loss.
Yeah.
And so, it's really about keeping tight, whether it's FaceTime or not, whether we're awkward or not. We have to do it somehow, one way or another. We got to stay tight. And that's what I'm trying to do. My brothers and his family, his kids, they're stuck in London.
Yeah.
My folks are stuck in Philly. I'm stuck here, and we're gonna make the most, not just on Christmas Day, but like throughout somehow. We're just gonna leave the channels open. You know what I mean?
Yeah. They're incredible little opportunities to connect and share. They don't all have to be milestones. They can be very.
Yeah. No.
They can be very.
It's not about striving for significance in all moments. It's actually just about showing up.
Yes. Yeah.
Even if that means FaceTime.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I did. You don't quite have the words for where you're at the moment. We're sort of teasing it out, and I don't know if this will get Dylan's knife, but there's a story that I'll tell some night about a loss in my life. And I've mentioned the Byron Katie before, who is for lack of a better word, a kind of a guru, a self-help person. She's sort of rolled. She's someone who had incredible trauma and difficulty in her life. She was on her knees, alcoholic, drug addict with young children, single mom, really, really in a bad place. Bare wooden floors, no food, really bad, and figured it out and has stuff to share. And what she teaches is a lot of principles that we know and understand from Buddhism and a whole bunch of stuff, meditation and really good stuff. And she has this practice she calls the work. And anyway, I've been to a couple of her events. She does this New Year's cleanse every year, which is a 3 or 4 day thing where she does the process of the work. So the work is like a simple sort of step-by-step procedure that you do. And we could do it on anything, including the thing that I was talking about earlier, where I have regrets or whatever. And you can sort of interrogate your ideas, the stories that you have. And her tagline, sort of famous line, is, "Who would you be without your story?" So it's like, let's let go of the stories that we're carrying. Let go of these ideas. When new ideas pop into your mind, let's devalue the fuck out of them, because they're just thoughts, and thoughts are bullshit mostly. So she's just, it's good stuff. She's really good at making it land. Anyway, I was at one of her events, and they're incredibly powerful because you'll get a couple of hundred people in a room for 3 days, and she does the work. And sometimes it takes 10 minutes with someone, sometimes it takes an hour. And she moves through these steps. No need to go through the steps. But anyhow, you get the opportunity to bring problems to the table. So I talked to her, stood up in the room and talked to her about it's not really a dramatic story, but it's just it's about the power of reframing something. I talked to her about a loss in my life, and I said, listen, been through this loss. I described it, everyone in the room gasps because it's a good one. And I've done the mental work of understanding what happened. I have a kind of an empathy for the person who let me down, the aggressor, if you want to call him that, or whatever, the person at fault. I've sort of understood my role in it, how I walked into it, how I left it, my guilt around things I did or didn't do, etc. I've sort of done the mental work of unpacking it. Like imagine you'd gone to lots of therapy and looked at it from all angles. And that's cool. But about once a week when I'm driving down the freeway, I'll start crying, like really fucking crying. Or it just catches me at moments and I have this incredible pain, you know? So I kind of feel like I've thought my way, and you had a really good observation when I told you this story, Spider, which I'll share at the end. But I've sort of thought my way through this. I've sort of done all of the work, pardon the pun, of like what I think I can do with this. But I'm left with this pain. And, you know, I'm standing kind of shaking, telling my story in front of a couple of hundred people. And she asked, "Are you sure it's pain?" And I was like, well, it feels like fucking pain because I'm bawling, crying, and you know, my stomach's a knot and my heart is, you know, the whole thing, it feels a lot like pain, you know? She's like, "Are you sure it's pain?" And I was like, yeah. And she's like, "Are you sure it's not love?" And it was just like this crazy freedom that came from that, because from that moment on, almost without failure, when the loss came to mind, it was a warm, happy feeling of what I'd had, of my love for this person, as opposed to the pain of loss. You know what I mean? So she just reframed it, and I'm just wondering, I'm wondering if all you're feeling is love for this dude.
Oh yeah.
That it's just that, you know?
A lot of that.
That it's just, but it's big, and it's like, where do you put all that love? You know what I mean?
It's bigger than you. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like what, you know, so it's like.
It's that coupled with the part of that I brought up about this connection where I just like, I don't know when the last time I talked to him was, besides him congratulating me on a Grammy nomination, you know, like last year, this time about, you know, it's probably like within a week, you know, of that, hearing the good news. Just like so it's a bit of both. It's a bit of just not being that good at that, mixed with what you just said, just severe love. Yeah. You know, and I told you before you know, before getting on mic, but just like what he's done for my family.
Yeah.
Just like,
it just seems like a real,
it's the things I aspire to do for my friends and my family, you know, it's like comes from somewhere. I've seen it hands. Firsthand.
He's modeled it.
Yeah. So, and one of the only people in my early childhood that was able, you know, to model what I want to also provide for people.
Yeah.
So,
what a role model.
So severe love. You're right. Yeah.
Spider's point, when I told him that story originally, I don't even know where we were. Were we in New York or somewhere? I can't remember. There's, you know, Spider got the whole story, but, Spider's point was, you know, when I described this idea of having moved through the mental work, the therapy style understanding work of what had happened. And Spider was like, well, the dude who, you know, then, whatever age you were then, 37, 39, 41, whatever, he had done. And then next year, you're a new dude. You know, had some more elegant way of saying it, but it was kind of like, you think you've peeled the onion, but a year later, 2 years later, 5 years later, with new experiences, new understandings, new language, new models, there's another onion layer to peel. Yeah. So you're never going to be done with it, you know?
I think I was comparing the way a song can grow with you. It can take on new meaning.
Yes.
As an example of.
Yeah, but that was it. Yeah. It was a better way of saying it. Anyway, that was a very long aside, and we'll see if it survives. But it
will.
But
no, I love this moment of, "Are you sure it's not love?" This is sort of like a. When you told the story to me, it was very much this sort of peak reveal, because I'm following you, and it's all making sense. And then it just suddenly made another kind of sense.
Yeah, that's how it was for me. It was like being hit by
it was like
being hit by a truck. I did not see that sentence coming.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I don't know what. I mean, I don't know what I expected her to say, but that was not it.
Also hearing that at the same time, following saying, "Well, I don't feel pain. This doesn't feel like pain to me." So that wouldn't be the word I would choose either. I don't have one. It doesn't hurt. I'm not like keeling over for it. Crying and whatever. It doesn't always have to be from pain or joy, right? It could be just from the unknown. Because I'm actually, I'm in limbo with this. Like, we don't actually know what's going to happen. Kind of like. So pain didn't come to mind when I was hearing that. I don't know what it is. Of course, it's love. I feel like there's got to be though profound. It sounds. I don't know.
I suppose
it's like too good to be true that the one word can express. Just feels like a lot more than one or two things.
It is, and the word has been cheapened. Let's be honest. The word has been
part
cheapened
of it
in the modern thing. I mean, people throw around the word love, a lot, and real love is overwhelming. It's overwhelming, and it's the kind of thing that humbles you and buckles your knees and it. I don't know how to describe it except that it humbles you. You're very small in the face of real love, coming at you or when you feel it for someone else.
Well, we talk and celebrate the benefits, but the cost is high too. Loss is an inevitable part of intimacy, of being known, of love. It's just part of the package.
You can't have it without it.
Yeah.
Michael, you got anything?
I knew that was coming.
Well, you've been quiet and I don't know. I feel like you've got something. For people listening. Michael is remote, and I'm used to having him to my side, but it takes more of a swing. We see you, but you're not in our field of vision. We have to, consciously do it. So it's a little bit more
deliberate,
and it sounds it. So I don't mean it to be that way. It's not like, oh, we've forgotten Michael, let's ask Michael. It's more, it needs to happen that way.
Well, I was just kind of listening and staring at the time and just thinking about how people might perceive this episode, and I'm excited about it. I think it's a much different episode than anyone we've really done before. It feels, and I'm just excited about it. I think it's good to have conversations like this, the same way we have other conversations with different feel, different mood. I'm excited to start releasing episodes sooner after we record them, because I think something like this is very much of this moment.
Yeah.
So that's something to really look forward to in the next few weeks, actually.
Yeah, we're caught up in a few weeks.
But in terms of my thoughts and everything that was said, I just feel like there isn't much to add. I don't even want to interject any more than, I would have.
Just imagining the listener getting all the plug-in sale emails and then getting a link to this and clicking on it and landing here in the middle of their Christmas break.
What's the best Waves plugin for Heartbreak? Which compressor is best for loss? Yeah.
Like Christmas tree emojis in the subject line.
Like which compressor is best for loss?
25% off regret.
Yeah. I'll just bring it back around. I mean, I kept saying how I'm bummed that I'm not going home for Christmas. And then I'm sitting, behind me is my first Christmas tree in LA. It's big. It's bright. There's a bunch of gifts underneath. I talked last week about wanting to next year lean more into the idea of generosity. And then I hear this podcast on Making Sense with Sam Harris about the effective altruism movement and donating 10% of your income and automatically and all this stuff, and like wanting that. So this Christmas is as generous as I can be, and I'm going to try to make the best of it because I have the opportunity to have Christmas in a home that I love with friends around and a girlfriend around that I love. And this is this is as fantastic as it can be. So I should reframe it to feel that way, because it can feel that way. And whether I'm able to do it or not, and whether any of us are able to do it or not, it can be framed that way. So I'm going to try to remember that. I love doing this every week. I'm excited to not talk most of next week and the week after. I think I'm going to do one more live with Matt Rad on Tuesday and then take a week off after that.
I'll be there.
Yeah?
That'll be the only work I do next week.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. We're doing an hour on meditation and our experience over the course of the year on it. And it's not going to be like really music talk, which is exciting to me. By that point, that'll be the day where Matt Rad completes his 60 days in a row of doing 60 minutes of nothing, kind of the Naval experiment. That'll be the day that it is the last one. So that's why we're doing it. So I'm going to make the best of this year. Y'all are going to be around, so I'll see you. Michael, I'll see you in January. Wish you were here. Wish I was there, one of the two.
You guys have gifts coming your way.
Damn.
And Rory just got one today.
It was awesome. Thank you.
That was an amazing coincidence.
Crazy. But crazy.
I think I'm sending them all to John.
Okay.
So,
I'll sort it. I'll sort it out. Also, yours is
can't wait for you guys to see it.
Probably not. It'll arrive before you get back to LA because it's coming from, I think, Copenhagen, and they're being really slow.
It'll arrive in LA.
Yeah, at some point before you get back. Cool. So you're when we exchange gifts, I'm showing you photos of said gifts that are coming, and they've confirmed that they're coming.
Futures in gifts.
Well, it's tough because what I found, I don't think there are more than a few.
Don't give it away.
Made, so you have to I'm not gonna give it away. No
clogs.
Yeah. Toe shoes for hiking. Anyway, so you're gonna get a photo of a gift for a minute.
Sick.
Guys,
this was great. Thank you for my birthday celebration, and thank you for a really interesting conversation.
It's a tough one for me. I hope some of it landed. You guys were great.
You did great. This was great. It's a conversation.
Good luck, Dylan.
Leave it all. Just leave it. Don't do anything.
It's
we trust you.
Yeah.
I really am committed to this idea that the conversations are they're just going to be different, just like our lives. Sometimes it's slow and dark and weird, and sometimes it's high tempo and funny and and sort of robust. Sometimes it's argumentative. Sometimes it's we're all telling each other how fucking great we are. Yeah. I'm down with that. It's there. That's how we talk. This is like this layer of glass that I talked about between us, and that's what we're trying to get rid of. Just the direct deal.
Great way to close.
We did collect some really interesting topics and jumping off points from people. And there was no right moment to pivot toward them tonight, but we've got them for next year, and I mean, I'm really excited about what we'll be able to do next year, bringing guests in, the kinds of guests we have in mind and have made some contact with. I'm just looking at this year to come with, a lot of optimism and excitement and enthusiasm and a little bit of fear. There's some big stuff on the table. It sort of intimidates me, but again, we talk these things through, we show up for each other, and, I know together, I feel a lot more confident about it.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah. I also wanted to speak to the community if anyone's listening. It doesn't need to be on the episode, but for everyone that's kind of written in this year to the account, for the 27 people that responded, that wanted to listen, 28 people, and then week over week, it's about the same number, but every time it's different accounts. So thank you. It feels like we were talking about before, the performance aspect, like what is a performance without an audience? And not only an audience, but an active group of people that are active in participating and active in giving us feedback,
contributing,
and listening and sharing and adopting the ideas, which in a way is the best form of feedback, because it doesn't mean that our ideas are right. It actually helps us identify where they're wrong, how they can be improved. And yeah, I think that is something that came out of this that we definitely didn't intend for or really think that would think about. And then that was just a beautiful thing that I get to see every day when I sign into the account. So happy holidays to all of the Conversations community and friends, to you guys. And it's been a year. 20 episodes. It's cool to end 20 episodes in 2020.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
It's great. That was a great closer, man.
Thank you.
We're done. We're out. See you next year.
Yeah.
Peace.
Conversations is produced and mixed by Dylan Seals. The Conversations theme was performed and recorded by the Hazelrigg brothers.